This morning in the Vatican, a seemingly ordinary audience took on a political and ecclesial weight that was anything but marginal. Pope Leo XIV received Cardinal Gerhard Ludwig Müller, Prefect Emeritus of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, a figure known for his rigorous doctrinal positions and his uncompromising criticism of the personalistic excesses of the contemporary papacy. The meeting, announced in a sober manner, is part of a series of hearings that is raising growing questions both inside and outside the sacred palaces. Leo XIV, from the beginning of his pontificate, chose a style defined by many as universal listening. He welcomes almost everyone, speaks to everyone, and opens doors without apparent ideological filters. This posture, on a pastoral level, is presented as a sign of openness and dialogue, but on an ecclesial level, it risks becoming an ambiguous message, especially when the figures he receives embody radically irreconcilable visions and histories. Cardinal Müller is not a neutral name. He is the same cardinal who, in a recent interview, warned against what he bluntly called a cult of the Pope, a harsh, deliberately provocative expression accompanied by an equally clear warning. The Pope is not a Führer. He is not a charismatic leader to be idolized. He is not the center of a personalized faith. He is not the founder of a new church. According to Müller, speaking of the Church of Francis, and by extension, any church of, means slipping into theologically incorrect, if not openly heretical language. Doctrine does not belong to the Pope, but to the Church. The pontiff can express it, safeguard it, and defend it, but cannot reinvent it or replace it with his own vision. In these words, Müller does not express a marginal opinion, but recalls a classical conception of the Petrine ministry. The Pope, as bishop among bishops, successor of Peter and principle of unity, founded not on human consensus or media fascination, but on received faith and revealed truth. A concept that paradoxically today seems almost countercurrent, in an age in which the papacy is often experienced and described as a global communicative phenomenon. It is no coincidence that Müller recalled how an embryonic form of papalatry had already emerged in the 19th century, amplified then by the press and today exacerbated by social media. The Pope, photographed, applauded, chased, transformed into a pop icon, a spiritual father reduced to celebrity. A pastor greeted more with a smartphone than with the sign of the cross. According to the cardinal, these aren't mere folkloristic details, but rather signs of a profound distortion of Catholic sentiment. And it is precisely here that the audience granted by Leo XIV takes on a significance that goes beyond a simple institutional meeting. Because a few days earlier, the same pontiff had received a very different figure. Roger Mahony, former Archbishop of Los Angeles, whose name is linked to one of the darkest pages in the management of abuse in the American clergy. Documents made public in court have shown how credible allegations were handled within church structures, with priests moved between parishes and civil authorities deliberately kept apart. The official photograph of Leo XIV next to Mahony sparked immediate reactions, dismay, indignation, and unanswered questions. It wasn't a private, silent meeting, but a visible, symbolic, communicative gesture, an image that in the unwritten language of the Church speaks as much, if not more, than a document. It is in this context that the audience with Müller becomes explosive on a symbolic level. On the one hand, a cardinal denounces the papal personality cult and the risk of a church built around one man. On the other hand, a pontiff who seems to want to hold together everything and the opposite of everything, receiving, without distinction, the defender of doctrine and the symbol of a failed management of ecclesiastical justice. The resulting message is far from clear. Leo XIV listens to everyone. But what does he discern? He welcomes everyone. But what does he approve? The Church does not judge consciences, it's true, but it governs signs. And the signs, in this case, seem to overlap to the point of confusion. There is a paradox that cannot be ignored. Just as Müller warns against the Pope's transformation into a nearly untouchable figure, immune to all criticism, the pontificate of Leo XIV seems to be building around an increasingly marked symbolic centrality. Everything passes through the Pope. Everything converges on the Pope. Everything is legitimized by the simple fact of being received by the Pope. This is the risk that Müller had precisely indicated. When the Pope becomes the center that absorbs every contradiction, the Church loses the clarity of its criteria. This isn't about questioning the Pope's legitimacy, nor fueling a sterile controversy. It's about acknowledging a real tension that pervades Catholicism today. On the one hand, the need to reaffirm doctrine, discipline, and responsibility. On the other, a practice that favors inclusive gestures, even when such gestures risk relativizing everything. The audience with Müller could be read as a sign of balance, an attempt to reassure the doctrinal wing of the Church. But the problem isn't the mathematical balance of the audiences. The problem is the coherence of the message. Receiving Müller after Mahony doesn't erase the previous scandal, just as receiving Mahony before Müller doesn't neutralize the force of the German cardinal's words. Ultimately, the question that emerges is only one, and it is profoundly ecclesial. What idea of unity is taking shape under Leo XIV? A unity founded on truth, as Müller recalls, or a unity built on indiscriminate acceptance, where everything is held together at the cost of clarity? The risk, openly denounced by the cardinal, is that such a church will end up giving reason to the Protestant criticisms of yesterday and today. A papacy perceived as absolute authority, as an autonomous source of legitimacy, as a charismatic figure replacing tradition. This is precisely what Catholicism has always rejected. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.